Bills Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame, we will be breaking down what we expect to see from the Bills this evening, plus previewing our key matchups and handing out pregame superlatives. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour Cover One pregame show brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. My name is Steve Mathis, and I can be found literally right now in my mother's basement. So all of those internet trolls who always tell people to go back to living in your mother's basement, well, I have temporarily, while here in Buffalo, back visiting family and back in my mother's basement. And I am joined, as always, by the voice of reason, Tilt Money. How you doing today, Dave?
Doing good, man. I went to go see Jerry Seinfeld last night. He was in town, so had a nice night out with the wife and a couple friends. So I'm feeling good today. And Bill's game's not till later. I got some family stuff after this, so full weekend for me.
And I'll tell you what, expect 0 tweets from the Air Raid account during the game today, because after this is over, this pregame show is over, I'm heading out to Orchard Park, and I will be in the stands for the game this afternoon. I am super pumped. It's going to be my first game in about 3-4 years since moving out to Arizona. So really looking forward to being there in person. I wonder if the anxiety level is going to change being there in person, surrounded and having a responsibility now. Normally on game day, it's just my responsibility to shitpost on Twitter. So today it's going to be my responsibility to be loud, to be proud, to bring the good vibes, and to cheer on this football team. So I'm really looking forward to that. Speaking of the game, Bills, Jets, Bills season on the brink, really one AFC loss away from just being crushed. The weather looking pretty good for this game. Clear 40s, high 30s at game time. Slight wind expected, but that's Orchard Park, and that's what happens in Buffalo. So maybe when we get to special teams, we can talk about the wind a little bit. The inactives for the Buffalo Bills has not been announced yet, but projected: Damar Hamlin, Balon Spector, Jermaine Ifedi, Alec Anderson. And then depending on injury, it's either going to be Jordan Phillips if he can go, or it's going to be Poona Ford. So Christian Benford is back, even if it's just in a backup role behind Rasul Douglas and Dane Jackson. And you might see Poona Ford this week for Jordan Phillips. Thoughts on the Buffalo Bills? I want to say getting healthier, but really half our team's on injured reserve, or half our defense is on injured reserve, so I can't really say that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think of it now from the standpoint of like who's not on injured reserve, guys that legitimately need to play for your team from here on out the rest of the way. And from that perspective, the Bills are in decent shape, right? Those things aside. Yeah. So obviously the guys on injured reserve are irreplaceable, right? But you get a guy like Christian Benford back today in a matchup where maybe it's a nice matchup to get him back, because even if he's not necessarily all the way back, the Jets aren't exactly the most potent passing offense. So you get him back in the rotation with Rasul Douglas and Dane Jackson. That is nice. You do get Micah Hyde back today as well, which is nice. So you are like, if there's a trend that can be looked at positively for this team from an injury lens, like this is maybe one of the few silver linings we can say in recent weeks for the Bills on the injury front. So looking okay. And it's nice to get the corners back and to get Micah Hyde back.
Looking at the Jets is a completely different story. Their inactive list is going to be all injured players. Obviously, they have Aaron Rodgers on injured reserve still, but Dwayne Brown, their left tackle, Chaz Surratt, Billy Turner, Kenny Yeboah, and Sam Agivon are all out. Will McDonald is questionable. Garrett Wilson is questionable, but should play with his elbow injury. And then a late addition, which is never good, to the injury report for the Jets, and this could be a key injury for them. Nickel cornerback Michael Carter III. no longer have to really designate him the third because they released their other Michael Carter this
Yeah.
week, who's now an Arizona Cardinal. But that could be a late injury report for a hamstring, questionable. I don't know. I feel like maybe Michael Carter the third maybe won't play in this game, or at least he'll be hampered. And this is a team that goes mostly nickel, and they play a mostly base nickel defense. So this could be a big injury for the New York Jets.
Yeah, those late additions to the injury report, never a good thing. It's usually something that happened at practice that was unexpected. Usually you don't get a guy practicing in full for the week and then all of a sudden pop up late and then still play. And like you said, even if he is active for this game, you would expect that he's definitely not going to be 100%. So Jets going through it right now. I think the most important one is probably Garrett Wilson for them right now, but he's probably going to play. It seems like he will. So yeah, the Jets, the Jets O-line, as you mentioned, banged up. They are looking like they're going to be sending out the same offensive line, I think, that they sent out against the Raiders.
So they're actually not, because
Oh, they're not. Okay.
Their right guard against, and that was what I was going to get to next. Their right guard against the Raiders was Xavier Newman Johnson, who was on their practice squad. He was elevated from their practice squad to play in that game.
Fair enough.
He was not elevated this week. So who was elevated this week? It was former Oregon undrafted free agent Jake Hansen, who's played center in the past at the University of Oregon, is an interior offensive lineman. So the Jets could go a number of ways on the right side of their offensive line. They could just insert Jake Hansen at right guard, so have another practice squad player at right guard with Max Mitchell at right tackle. Or what they've done in the past is moved Max Mitchell into right guard, and they have Dennis Kelly to play at right tackle, which is something. And I had to go down the rabbit hole of Jets Twitter to figure out who the hell was starting on their offensive line, because I could not for the life of me figure it out, because I was trying, I went to PFF and I'm like, who played at right guard last week? And it was like Xavier Newman Johnson. I'm like, he's on the practice squad. He wasn't elevated. What the hell's going on? Like, who's playing at right guard? Went down Jets Twitter rabbit hole, and Jets Twitter is very not a big proponent on moving Max Mitchell from right tackle to right guard. So they're hoping for Jake Hansen at right guard or Dennis Kelly at right guard, Max Mitchell at right tackle. But there is the possibility, because coaches are stupid and don't do what the fans want to do, that they could have Max Mitchell at right guard and a veteran and Dennis Kelly at right tackle. So either way, we're going to get to this when we get to the Buffalo Bills defense versus the Jets offense. You got to exploit this offensive line, and we cannot let Zach Wilson continue to beat us.
No. And the thing is, the Jets offensive line, they've been mixing and matching all year. They really have been a weak link on an offense that has a lot of weak links, right? So this is going to be definitely, we'll get to it when we get to the Bills defense.
Good question here from Roy Collins. He comes in and says, everyone seemed excited about the Poona Ford signing. What happened? Is he really just not that good? I think we put a fan lens on, right? When it comes to the Buffalo Bills free agent signings, every single signing is going to be a steal. Every single signing is going to be the diamond in the rough. At the end of the day, look at Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield. Not exactly what we were all hyping them up to be in the preseason as members of this Buffalo Bills offense. There was probably a reason why Poona Ford was sitting around so late into the free agency game. Sometimes you hit. Leonard Floyd was a hit. Sometimes you miss. And it appears like Poona Ford was a miss, but a lot of the guys here at Cover One who do a really good job breaking down the film, like Anthony Prohaska says, he doesn't mind what he's seen from Poona Ford on film. So it really is just Poona Ford being in the coach's doghouse for whatever reason that we don't understand and we don't know, because we're not in the practice setting.
Right. And I think the Bills going out and getting Linval Joseph off his couch, right, so to speak, I think told you what they felt about the prospects of Poona Ford going forward, at least for this season. I think they would rather see him in a reserve role in sort of break glass in case of emergency role, even though maybe he has played solidly. The Bills really did feel like they still needed to shore up on that interior. So, well, I still like Poona Ford. I still think it's a nice guy to have in the back pocket if you need it. So I'm okay with it.
All right. Before we get to the Buffalo Bills offense and new offensive coordinator Joe Brady going up against this really staunch New York Jets defense, a few words from the guys over at the Cover One Buffalo podcast.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
All right. So now let's talk about the Buffalo Bills offense versus the New York Jets defense. And the Buffalo Bills offense, quite the shakeup this week. We haven't even had a chance to talk about it because we didn't have our normal post-game show this week. Big news, Ken Dorsey out as offensive coordinator, Joe Brady in as offensive coordinator. We'll talk about Joe Brady in a moment. First, let's take a couple of minutes just to talk about the firing of Ken Dorsey. A lot of people, the national narrative, right, was how can a defensive coordinator who calls a cover zero blitz that allows the pass interference call scapegoat an offensive coordinator after the Denver game? Or how can a head coach who has 12 men on the field when the game-winning field goal is missed, how can he blame and fire and scapegoat the offensive coordinator the next day? Ken Dorsey definitely was not fired because of the Denver Broncos game. It was a culmination of probably what was a year and a half in the making. Dave, what was your thoughts on the firing of Ken Dorsey?
Yeah, and I mean, even if it wasn't a year and a half in the making, it was certainly a culmination of, at worst, going back to the London game, right? When the Bills played the Jags. So you talk about like the last 4 to 6 weeks, the Bills offense really struggling out of the gates in each game. And at times, right, needing to score when they've needed to score and when they've needed to get it in the end zone, they have, but it's been in really high stress, high tension type situations against teams that really are below the skill level of the Bills and the talent level of the Bills. Now, maybe we're over, maybe over hyping the Bills talent level, but I don't think so, right? I think the Bills, it's notable that they've been slow out of the gates on offense the last 4 to 6 weeks. They've had really tough field position. They've been killing themselves with penalties. And this is a culmination, like you said, whatever time frame you want to go back to. It wasn't just because of whatever happened in this Denver Broncos game. That's really probably the least of Ken Dorsey's issues was the Denver Broncos game, right? But it has been a culmination. The Bills need to get some kind of spark, some kind of new vibes, as they've been saying on social media, in the building, in the offensive, meetings, etc. And you're not getting rid of Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs, right? Personnel wise, you're really not changing much. You can't. And the head coach is not going to fire himself, right? So unless Terry Bagula comes in and wants to make a drastic change at the head coaching position, like that's not going to change mid-season. So the Bills, recognizing that the season is on the brink, and felt like they had to make a change, and this is the change they made. And so there's others that are not absolved of blame, but Ken Dorsey was part of the problem, right? So there is a reason why he's no longer here.
Yeah, I mean, we had this conversation in February in our postseason breakdown when we were breaking down what should the Buffalo Bills do heading into the offense or into the offseason. And, we stated that we didn't think Ken Dorsey should come back as offensive coordinator. We said this team is in a window. Josh Allen is at a place and he's starting to get pushing towards 30 at 28 years old. We're at a place where we can't have a guy learning on the job. And Ken Dorsey was clearly learning on the job, and Sean McDermott was banking on him and putting it all together with an off season and gaining experience. And I mean, I was pro go out and get Todd Monken. I was pro go out and find a more experienced play caller. The Buffalo Bills decided to go in another direction, and here we are, 6 months later, 7 months later, 8 months later, because it just never clicked for Ken Dorsey. And there was a lot of really smart people who had a really, really smart takes, I think, about the firing of Ken Dorsey this week. Our guy Adam, who charts the Bills games for us every week on Huddle here at Cover One, does a great job. You can find him on Twitter at Sharpened Pencils. He just said, listen, Allen is second guessing everything he does out there. This offense was almost paralysis by analysis, and that was one of the reasons why the Buffalo Bills players were not executing to the level we're used to seeing them execute. Josh Allen was a little bit off because, for whatever reason, the running game element, whether it's his shoulder injury or it's Sean McDermott or it's Ken Dorsey, somebody was in his head taking that running game element out of this offense, which is a big part of what Josh Allen does. And I really do think that Ken Dorsey was just catering too much to a defense as opposed to establishing an identity for this offense. Instead of our offense being, hey, this is who we are, come stop us. It was very much, well, what do we think the defense is going to do this week? And what are we going to do if they do this? And what are we going to do if they do that? And I think Bruce Exclusive over at Buffalo Rumblings made some really good points. And I shared his Twitter thread. It's like, there was an option for everything. The defense does this, we can switch to that. The defense does this, we can switch to that. It was so much reacting, and it wasn't enough just going out there and doing your own thing. And I think that Ken Dorsey maybe leaned too much into that and not enough into establishing an identity for this offense. And I think it eventually bit him in the ass because the Buffalo Bills players just weren't going out there and playing fast. They weren't playing loose. They weren't playing comfortable, and they weren't playing confident. You can put that on the players because technically, on paper, Ken Dorsey had an answer for everything. But and it just wasn't clicking.
And this is part of his role, right, as the offensive coordinator. It's not just about the play calling itself, right? It's the scheme, it's coaching guys up during the week. And like, it's great to know. It's like it's a great idea in theory, right? It would work like in a more of like a simulation style scenario where you were running like simulations against the but in real world, right? In the real world where guys are like human beings and need to essentially be playing in a mindset where like there's no second guessing and they have to be decisive and confident. Like this didn't work out, right? So while design wise that may be great in theory, it just didn't translate. And look, I like one of the comments someone said, someone mentioned in the comment section talking about like this was a messaging to the players about execution. And I think that's part of why you see guys like Gabe Davis saying like, oh, we're heartbroken that Ken Dorsey's no longer here. But like, that's a message to the players, right? Like some of this is on you as well from an execution standpoint. Some of this is on Ken Dorsey, but like there are times where the execution has failed as well. And maybe the execution has failed because there has been a lack of that sort of freeing your mind type of, and there's just too much going on in these guys' heads. And like in situations where things do work and the play call does get adjusted to something that would beat that defense, there's still too much going on in these guys' minds. So hopefully things get a little bit simpler and we'll see starting today because it's going to be a tough test.
Charles G coming in with a great comment. He says, not enough time for major changes, but I'm curious to see the personnel and formation usage, what type of plays that Joe Brady calls in high leverage situations. And that's what we're going to get to next year. So the Buffalo Bills have a new offensive coordinator in Joe Brady. Likely not enough time for him to really put any type of stamp on this offense or install new plays into this offense, but he can certainly add wrinkles and he can certainly change the way in which the game is called in terms of how they run the plays, how they structure the plays, etc. What changes do you think we're going to see? Maybe even not just this game specifically, but for the rest of the season under Joe Brady? What are some elements that you think we'll see or that you'd like to see under Joe Brady?
Well, I think even if you keep the same playbook, there's some certain things where you can say like these types of plays should be high percentage plays to like play these players, like player A, player B. So simplify things a bit and say, look, regardless of the defense that's out there, these types of plays should generally work, anticipating broadly what the defense is going to do against us, their typical schemes, etc. And like give some of these, like take some of the optionality out of the playbook when it comes to things that should be like layups, right? Schematic things that should be layups. Number two, I think sequencing of play calling, right? And you can have the same playbook and you can have good plays, right? At times there have been really good moments for this offense and like getting into a rhythm and knowing when to call certain plays in game situations, making sure you're situationally aware of like down and distance, time left, etc. Like there's some things that can be improved there. And there's also the coaching element, right? And kind of the, hey, these types of plays we've run all year, I want you to be looking at James Cook out of the backfield more on this play. I want you to be looking at whoever more on this play. make that sort of a primary read. And like the coaching element to me is probably the element where maybe like you can see an influence more on execution off the same plays, and Joe Brady getting maybe a little bit more into Josh Allen's ear about, hey, we looked at this play in the first quarter. We didn't take what was the defense was giving us. Let's come back to it later and let's really go to James Cook on this play, or let's really go to Dalton Kincaid on this play. And maybe there's more of an influence on execution for Joe Brady to Josh Allen than maybe there was for Ken Dorsey. So little things like that, maybe you could see, and then maybe some added wrinkles as you go forward. But yeah, I think there are some things that can immediately be done.
Yeah, I like all three of those suggestions, so much so that I'm afraid to share mine now because it make mine sound like a caveman. Those are very well thought out and nuanced responses. My list here, get back to feeding Stefon Diggs. Very, very just blunt. More Josh Allen runs, under center plus play action more.
Yeah, no, that's
just some very nuanced responses from me here. Get James Cook involved in the passing game, so we overlap there a little bit. Establish and maintain a running game. Utilize the middle of the field more. And I put Shakir ... Curtis Samuel ? I'm not saying they're the same type of player, but I saw a really good post today on Twitter, and I'm blanking. I think it was like Talking Sports Buffalo, and if it was someone else, I apologize. Joe Brady was like the first offensive coordinator like in Carolina Panther history to have 4 guys go for over 1,000 yards from scrimmage in a season. He had DJ Moore, he had Robbie Chosen, he had Curtis Samuel, and he had Mike Davis, the running back, all go over 1,000 yards in the season that he was the full season that he was offensive coordinator. I'm not saying Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir are the same type of player, but I think that they can be weaponized in very similar ways. You can get Khalil Shakir the ball in the screen game. You can get Khalil Shakir the ball in yards after the catch situations. You can get Khalil Shakir the ball in the backfield like a running back. I think there are a number of things that you can do with Khalil Shakir because he's practically, once he catches the ball and turns upfield, he's a running back, right? He's got that contact balance. He's got that vision. So I think that Khalil Shakir needs to become more of an emphasis on the offense as well. I'm not saying he's wide receiver 2 because that's Dalton Kincaid. I'm not even saying he's wide receiver 3 like traditional boundary guy because that's Gabriel Davis. But just getting him 5, 6, 7 targets a game. I think he had, 1 target in that game last week against the Broncos, and it was a catch. It was a big catch, right? So get Khalil Shakir more involved, get the ball in his hands and put him in situations where he can make plays. I think that's something. Him and James Cook are 2 guys, and Dalton Kincaid down the field. I'm adding to the list as we go here. Dalton Kincaid down the field. I feel like there's a number of things the Buffalo Bills can do to spruce up this offense without changing the playbook. And it's just about getting the ball in the hands of your playmakers.
Yeah, and I like the point you made about like staying committed to the run game, right? Because I think the Bills have shown, and the offensive line has really done a good job this year, by and large, in the run game. And especially when we start talking about this Jets team today, really good defense, but they have been susceptible to the run. Now the Jets have allowed, from a volume perspective, the 4th most rushing attempts of any team. So it's not maybe going to come easy early. And we saw this against the Raiders last week with the Jets. Josh Jacobs was bottled up like largely for the better part of that game until the later stages, 3rd, 4th quarter. And then he broke off a few. And that gets back to the commitment, right? The Raiders had a commitment to stick with Josh Jacobs and stick with that running game. Now, part of that is because they had Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. I get that.
Yeah.
But the Bills can't just, James Cook, 2-3 attempts, only like 6-7 yards. They can't go away from that if that's the case early. And another thing I would like to see going forward, and this is not necessarily maybe a Joe Brady thing, but I'd like to see in the Hunt Lenny get activated here. It's probably not going to be today, but maybe next week.
Charles G comes in and says, has Brady said whether he'll be in the booth or the sideline? He said in his introductory press conference he hadn't decided yet, and then it hasn't been announced, so I guess we'll figure out when everyone else figures out. Someone's going to have to text me because I'm not going to be watching.
Get your binoculars television in there in the stadium.
So someone will have to text me. I'll be like upper nosebleeds behind the Jets sideline. So he hasn't decided yet. He at LSU was famously up in the booth with the actual offensive coordinator, Steve Ensminger, because he was only the passing game coordinator. So he only had he only had a say in play calling. He wasn't the actual play caller, but he was up in the booth with Enzinger at LSU. He was in the booth to start in Carolina, I believe. I could be wrong, in his first year. And then as Matt Rule became more of, Matt Rule and ruining fun things, he came down to the sideline before he was ultimately fired halfway through his second season. So my prediction, I don't know. Let's predict here. My prediction is Booth. But also, I think maybe Sean McDermott's going to be like, come on, let's get down to the sideline. I don't know. What do you think?
I think my brain tells me Booth, but I think for this first game, it would be nice, like, to have him on the sideline.
I've always preferred my coordinators in the booth, but which is weird because some of the best play callers are head coaches and they call from the sideline. So I don't know what it is, but
yeah, I mean, if I had to bet on it, I'd bet he's in the booth, but I would not be mad at all if he's on the sideline.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about the Jets defense. Scary, right? They are a 4-2-5 unit. They're almost strictly nickel, even though we talked at the beginning of the show about how Michael Carter III might be out, late addition to the injury report with a hamstring injury. The Jets defense this year, there's a trend here. 60% light box usage, 5th in the NFL. They do a really good job going back and forth between 1 high shell and 2 high shell. 40% 1 high shell usage this year, 52% 2 high shell usage. They are number 1 in the NFL utilizing a 4-man pass rush. They are also like the second most effective team utilizing a 4-man pass rush. There's a reason why they do it. And they are 31st in the NFL in blitz rate. The Jets drop dudes back into coverage and they get pressure with 4. The thing that when the Buffalo Bills defense is its most effective, when they're healthy and they're humming, the Jets have been doing consistently this year, getting pressure with 4, dropping everybody back into coverage, mixing between man and zone, mostly zone, but do a good job and have the dogs to play man. This Jets defense is going to be one that's going to be very, very tough to move the ball on and to score points on.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously expect points to be at a premium today. The Bills, this is a perfect example of the Bills needing to take what the defense gives them today. Like, it's not going to be an efficient day, most likely on offense. So people are probably going to conflate that with the offensive struggles that continue. And that may be the case, but the Bills really have to stay patient today. They have to stay committed to the run. They have to try to keep that third down conversion rate up, keep yourselves in manageable third down distances today. Because like you said, the Jets drop back and they're a really good third down defense as well. So this is a situation where like a 4 or 5 yard play is not a bad play on offense today. The Jets aren't going to give up a ton of big plays. We know that already. So,
and going back and looking at the data from the opening night Monday Night Football game, the Jets 84% light box usage against the Bills in week 1. That was number 1, tops in the NFL in week 1.
Yeah.
They went 2 high shell 68% of the plays, which is something that Josh Allen saw a lot early, learned to pick it apart, and then he was having issues with the 1 high shell the last 6 weeks. 80% of their rushes were 4-man rushes, and they ran slightly more man coverage than they average or typically do. So the Jets were all about getting pressure on Josh Allen with 4, dropping everyone back into coverage, and forcing him to make mistakes. And that's why the number one thing for the Buffalo Bills today, hey, Josh Allen, don't turn the ball over. Like, that would be ideal if you're the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, you got to play a clean game today if you're on offense. I mean, look, the Jets, you know, we know we're going to get to that in a second on their offense, but like, you cannot give the Jets defense easy, short fields for their offense that doesn't score a lot of points. Like, make it as hard as possible on this team. And if that means like playing the field position game for a bit, and we'll talk about that in special teams as well, but like, you got to start thinking about like, where do you have advantages in this game? You have an advantage potentially running the ball. The Jets, for as good as their defense is, they're bottom half in the NFL in run D. They're not great at defending running backs in the passing game, 18th in DVOA there. So like you said, get James Cook involved in the passing game. You got to find these little matchups that you might have a slight advantage in. And that's where you really, if you're the Bills, you have to stay patient today, because it's not going to be, it's not going to be a track meet for the offense. You're going to have to stay patient. Field goal drives are not necessarily going to be bad things against this team. Any scoring, I think, drives against this team are going to be positives.
Yeah, and Charles G comes in and says, I think Kincaid versus the Jets linebackers is a plus matchup. work the middle of the football field, utilize Dalton Kincaid. Don't just stick to living outside the hash marks. Establish and maintain the run game, right? Set yourself up in those short and manageable situations. Any other week, I'd be very much more open to just dropping back and letting Josh Allen ball out, right? But that's the thing. All the things that we're sort of preaching and want to see more of from the Bills offense, kind of like we got to put a plug in that for 1 week just because of how good this Jets defense is. Set yourself up in manageable situations, as you said. Limit your turnovers, limit your penalties. Don't put yourself behind the sticks. Get the ball into the hands of your playmakers in space. Find ways to get Khalil Shakir the ball. Find ways to get Stefon Diggs the ball. Josh Allen, don't pump fake it to James Cook. Give it to James Cook, right? Dump him the ball out of the backfield. That's what the Buffalo Bills got to do, and then hope a big play or two breaks over the course of this football game, and just try to consistently score points, right? Like, this is one of those games where, yes, you're going to want a touchdown or two, but I'm okay settling for field goals if we settle for 5 or 6 of them, because 15, 16 points might be enough.
We've seen this happen before in a Bills-Jets game.
It might be enough to win you a game, right? A touchdown and 4 field goals might be enough to win you this football game. like that. That's the kind of game. And then you got to play good complementary football. You can't turn the ball over. You got to play good special teams and have good field position. And you got to control the clock and maintain good time of possession. If you can do those 3 things, the Buffalo Bills will have a really good chance at winning this football game. And they are and should be the favorites despite their struggles as of late, because if the Buffalo Bills come out and don't beat themselves, they are the better football team on the football field today, despite all these injuries, because they have Josh Allen. We have Josh Allen, and they have Zach Wilson. And we're going to talk about that right now as we talk about the Buffalo Bills defense versus the New York Jets offense. And I'm old school today with the paper notes because I only got one computer. So I got to flip my page here on the legal pad. The Jets offense is as vanilla, I think, as you'll find usage-wise. Looking through SIS, they are bottom of the league in almost everything from use of motion, use of play action, use of RPO, use of no huddle. Like, they're 20th or worst in terms of usage. They don't do a lot of crazy things on offense. Where do they lead the league in usage, or at least are in the upper echelon of the league in usage? 13 personnel, 21 personnel, and running into a stacked box. Those are the 3 things where you'll see the usage rate for the New York Jets way higher than most of the teams in the National Football League. The QB that the Bills can't beat and is what am I trying to say here? The Jets know that they have a bad quarterback. It's a quarterback the Bills can't beat, and their own team knows he's a bad quarterback. And their game plan every week dictates and shows that.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you take a look at the last 3 games, I mean, I love that you mentioned the stat about the Jets just running into stacked boxes. I mean, they don't care. They're going to shove Breece Hall up there as much as they need to. Breece Hall in the last 3 games combined, 53 carries for 134 yards, only 2.53 yards per carry, but they don't care, right? I mean, they're still going to do it. That reflects in the usage of the 21 personnel, the 13 personnel. And the Jets know they have a bad quarterback. As you mentioned, they're dead last in the NFL in third down conversion percentage, converting only 25% of their third downs. So if you're the Bills and you get the Jets into 3rd and longs, Breece Hall, you can contain him to that sort of 3-ish yards per carry like he's been bottled up to the last few weeks. The Jets should be in a lot of 3rd and longs, and the Jets have also been killing themselves with offensive penalties as well. So you wonder, if that trend continues, the Bills should see the Jets in a lot of like 3rd and 6, 7+ yardage situations. So you can't be giving up a lot of first downs to this offense, right? That's the number one thing I think today is, like, don't let the Jets convert at a higher rate than they have been in 3rd downs this year, because that's just kind of like demoralizing, I feel like, if you're the Bills defense.
I'm going off script a little bit here today. I'm going to go off script a little bit here because if we can't beat this Jets team, like, that's going to be an indictment on Sean McDermott. Like, because they are starting a practice squad player at right guard, right? Their offensive line can't block for shit. Their quarterback is the worst in the National Football League. Probably half the backups in the National Football League are better than the quarterback the Jets are trotting out there. If the Jets would have just gone out and signed Joe Flacco off the street, they probably have a better record than they do right now. And they're probably ahead of the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East standings. Yet for some reason, this quarterback beats us every single freaking time. If we can't play good complementary football against this Jets offense, if we can't control time of possession, if we cannot win the turnover battle, if we cannot get pressure on Zach Wilson, if he for some reason miraculously has a high completion percentage, completes 25 of 28 of his passes like Mac freaking Jones did a couple of weeks ago, I'm team move on from our head coach now. I have transitioned from teetering on the edge to I just want to change for the sake of change's sake, because everything that Sean McDermott preaches, complementary football discipline, we're just not seeing it from this football team. And I think the message is stale. And if we can't beat this Jets team, if this Jets offense looks like it has a pulse, I don't care how many injuries our defense has. If this Jets defense looks like it has a pulse, I don't know. There's no defending this head coach anymore. And
No.
there could very well be a situation where when this game is over, the offense lost it for us again. I get that. But like, if the Jets offense even looks remotely competent, they scored 2 touchdowns in this game. It's a total systems failure unless the offense put them in awful field position. And even then, it's still total system failure because they're that bad.
The Jets have 1 touchdown, 1 offensive touchdown in their last 5 games. Zach Wilson has 1 passing touchdown in the last 5 games, and it was against the Giants on a Breece Hall screen where basically Breece did all the work. Last week against the Raiders, I think an analytically and statistically from a raw stats perspective, the Raiders are not a good defense. Okay. And the Jets only scored 16-12, right? Four field goals against the Raiders defense. So again, I know they had a touchdown call back for penalty, and that's part of why the Jets have been pretty bad and scoring touchdowns as well, right? They've had a lot of self-inflicted wounds, much like the Bills offense has. So again, like you said, like if the Jets somehow come out, there's no self-inflicted wounds, they look competent, that's not a good sign if you're the Bills defense in this one.
I don't know if it's because I'm going to be in the stands in this game or what, but like I'm just not confident in this football team right now. And I'm just thinking of all the ways in which things could go wrong for this team today to make this Jets offense look confident. I'm thinking back to New England when Mac Jones just dinked and dunked his way down the football field and had his way with the Buffalo Bills. I'm envisioning a world where like Zach Wilson goes 25 of 28 today, and I'm just want to blow my brains out by the end of the football game, right? Like I'm envisioning a world where like the Denver Broncos did last week, where Zach Wilson just keeps dumping the ball off to Breece Hall and he keeps getting these huge chunk plays, where Zach Wilson just closes his eyes, throws the ball up, and Garrett Wilson makes a back-breaking play. I'm envisioning a world where, like, for some reason, who's Xavier Gibson is just used in the way that like Demario Douglas or Trey Tucker had been used against us in weeks past, and just lights us up with some big chunk plays. I'm envisioning a world where like Ty Conklin becomes some third down machine and just picks up a whole bunch of third. Everything that could go wrong is just going through my head right now, because that's where we're at in this absolute tailspin of a football season that we're in.
And you know, I talked to Matt O'Leary, who runs the Jets page, and he does a really good job breaking down the Jets. And I talked to him on Friday, and I think one of the things that I think if you're a Jets fan that you were screaming about in that game against the Raiders is they didn't get Breece Hall involved in the passing game until later in the game. And then what happens?
He made a comment on Twitter too. I think he made the same exact comment. Yeah,
he rips off a 35-yard gain, like free Breece Hall if you're the Jets. Now I don't want that to happen. But like if you're the Jets, like
they keep hacking, just keep hacking.
By the way, they released Michael Carter, who kind of been sort of like their pseudo receiving back. Like they had taken Breece Hall off the field in a lot of like 2-minute situations and that, but like he's not there. So you would expect it's going to be the Breece Hall show today for the large part of this game. And if the Jets actually do decide to get him involved in the passing game early, that could be an issue for the Bills.
If you're the New York Jets, your game plan is literally the same exact game plan the Denver Broncos had. It is run the ball, establish time of possession. It is, when in doubt, just dump the ball off to your running backs for chunk plays, because for some reason Russell Wilson just kept dumping the ball off to running backs for chunk plays in the passing game. And then like make a good catch or two. Like your quarterback makes 1 or 2 plays, right? What was the NFL Next Gen Stats, there was like a 1.9% chance of that play succeeding that Cortland
Yep.
Sutton touchdown.
Yeah. That's just what happens to the Bills, though.
That's what the Jets got to hope for with Zach Wilson and Garrett Wilson, right? Like, if you're the Jets, that's your game plan in this game is just get the ball. Breece Hall is I'm already telling you right now who my respected player of the game is. This is going to be Breece Hall. Why? Because he legitimately is their offense.
Yep. If you're the Jets, I mean, Lazard's been a bust, but your offense now is going to funnel through three guys. It's going to be Breece Hall, it's going to be Garrett Wilson, and it's going to be probably Tyler Conklin, who's had a pretty decent stretch of games here lately and has been a nice option for them over the middle. Wilson, 12 plus targets. Garrett Wilson, 12 plus targets in 4 straight games, 7 plus catches in 4 straight games. So he's going to get his probably, but like the backbreakers are the things you got to avoid, right? He had the backbreaker against Trey White in week 1. He had, he's just got to be a guy that like you can't let him get that backbreaking toxic differential type of play on you.
Again, I don't know why, but I'm just like super nervous about like random nobodies stomping all over us in this game. And I don't want to call these guys random nobodies because they're good football players, but the guy who beat us week 1, Xavier Gibson, is becoming more and more a part of the offense. We saw in week 2, Trey Tucker had a really big end around play against us. We saw the New England Patriots use a lot of end arounds against us to gain chunk yards. Demario Douglas got super involved. I wouldn't be surprised if, and again, maybe I should be surprised because Nate Hackett's an idiot, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try to find a way to accentuate the skills of Xavier Gibson in this football game, right? So that's a guy that could be utilized, and that's a guy who could make some back-breaking chunk plays. If you're the Buffalo Bills, you're going to want to keep him in mind. And I wonder, too, Dalvin Cook's not good. We've all seen it this season. Like, there was a reason why nobody wanted him, right? Izzy Abanikanda is active for the first time. That's why Michael Carter was waived. I wonder, it might be early because he hasn't played in a while, but I wonder if Izzy Abanikanda could play a role in the Jets running game today as well. Maybe you see a new RB2 for the Jets taking some of these carries.
Yeah, I would think if you're the Jets, you probably transition sort of that passing down 2-minute offense kind of back to Breece, right? And you have Breece kind of like be the bell cow. And then, those, every third or fourth drive where they've been using Dalvin Cook, maybe it is Izzy coming in now for those types of situations just to get his feet wet.
Looking at some advanced statistics, Zach Wilson under pressure, 49.9% passer rating, completion percentage, 5 yards per attempt, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The Jets offensive line severely depleted left to right. Mekhi Becton, Laken Tomlinson, Joe Tippmann, maybe Jake Hansen, and then Max Mitchell at right tackle, or maybe Max Mitchell at right guard and Dennis Kelly at right tackle. Either way, the key for the Buffalo Bills in this football game is going to be, number 1, to shut down the running game and to shut down Breece Hall and to shut down Dalvin Cook and to shut down Izzy Abanikanda. And number 2, it's going to be to get pressure on Zach Wilson and force a really low completion percentage. Do not allow him to dink and dunk the ball down the football field. Continue to allow drives to turn into field goals, to allow the Jets to dominate time of possession. If you're the Buffalo Bills, your defensive line is the key to this football game.
Yeah, your defensive line is the key. You have to be able to get home this week. I mean, Zach Wilson, you saw it last week. There was that play where he had no sense of the pressure coming from behind him, and he got rid of the ball, obviously, in that scenario. But like his awareness is one of his deficiencies, right? Is like he doesn't have the best awareness. He doesn't have the best sense of when the pressure's behind him. So like you have to take advantage of that if you're the Bills. Leonard Floyd, AJ Epinesa, like these guys have played well for the Bills this year. Maybe, you finally see Von Miller make a splash play as well. But like I feel like AJ Epinesa and Leonard Floyd are going to play big roles today if the Bills want to keep the Jets in that really bad down and distance that they've been in and like almost insurmountable for them to get out of.
Yeah, someone in the comment, Roy Collins in the comment section said Tyrell Dodson or Dorian Williams. I would say probably Tyrell Dodson for his veteran experience and the fact that even though he has no game status, like no game tag, Dorian Williams was on the injury report this week with a knee injury. So I think the culmination of those two things would make me wager it'll probably be Tyrell Dodson. What are your thoughts on Dodson versus Williams? Week 8 of this competition, it seems like.
Well, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing for today either. I mean, if you're
Mhm.
the Jets, like you're probably going, I would imagine, trying to heavy run game against the
Yeah.
Bills and giving up some chunk plays on the ground if you're the Bills, especially running backs in the passing game. So if I'm the Bills, this isn't necessarily a bad thing to start with Tyrell Dodson. He's a little bit better of a run
Mhm.
defender right now, but I do think that Dorian Williams is probably more of the of the future and in the future plans. So
Yeah.
sideline to sideline, he's probably the guy that is better suited to, take some of these angles away from a guy like Brees Hall, maybe trying to get to the edge, etc. So it'll be interesting. I think like either way, it's not like a huge issue for the Bills this
Yeah.
week. I think either or is fine. Carl comes in, says Adam Schefter, Garrett Wilson listed as questionable, said it will play. Yeah, I think he's probably
Oh yeah,
almost a
he
lock to
he
play.
he he made that comment earlier in the week too that he was going to play. I think my favorite story from last week though, just I don't know, maybe I shouldn't make fun of Naked Hackett on this pregame show because it's just a jinx because what happened last time, but I'm going to do it anyway. Um, they called I didn't see the play, but they called like a reverse wide receiver pass, and Garrett Wilson underthrew the receiver for what maybe could have been a touchdown. And Garrett Wilson after the game was like, "Yeah, I had a bum elbow. Everyone knew I had a bum elbow, and that definitely affected the throw." So
Oh
they
my
called a
god.
trick play to Garrett Wilson to
Yeah.
throw a football when he had a bum elbow on his throwing hand. So that was interesting.
Classic.
Special teams, Russ or not, excuse me, Tyler Bass, Greg Zerline. That is sort of an even matchup, right? You got the young up and coming kicker who just got his extension, Tyler Bass, versus the veteran who always seems to come up clutch when he needs to, in Greg Zerline. In a place like Buffalo, in a game where field goal kicking could be important, Tyler Bass versus Greg Zerline could be important. Thomas Morstead definitely better than Sam Martin, the way Sam Martin's been punting the last couple of weeks. We talk about complimentary football. Sam Martin needs to, I don't know, get his head out of his ass and learn how to punt a football. And the Buffalo Bills punting unit needs to figure it the heck out because they are hurting this football team just as much as the offense is hurting this football team. And then Deontay Hardy versus Xavier Gibson is another one. Special teams could be a factor today.
Special teams definitely a factor. Sam Martin's been doo-doo lately. Line drive punts, returnable punts, and honestly, it's been a combination of that plus the Bills being just backed up pretty severely in their own, territory, has set up teams like the Denver Broncos were starting like from their own 40 plus almost every drive last week, and it's been a far cry from 3-4 weeks ago. The Buccaneers game where Sam Martin had probably maybe his best game as a Bill that week. It's been downhill since then. I would say the Jets certainly have an advantage in special teams today.
All right. Before we move on to our pregame superlatives, this show is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. 4 great locations in Western New York. Buffalo Pizza since 1980. I'll tell you what, I cannot wait to get a chance this week to go out and order my Picasso's Pizza and pick it up. I know my wife, when we had that pizza mailed out to us, she was like, "What is this goodness that is Picasso's Pizza?" Because she had never had Buffalo style pizza before. And she's like, "I didn't know Buffalo style pizza existed." I said, "Yeah, because we're so well known for our chicken wings that people forget that we also invented some pretty bomb ass pizza." So Picasso'sPizza.net, head on over there or call any one of their 4 great Western New York locations and order your game day meal from Picasso's Pizza, or really any meal from Picasso's Pizza. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, doesn't matter. Picasso's Pizza's got you covered. All right, on to our pregame superlatives, and let's start with our Take Me Higher player of the game. As always, in the comments section, let us know who your Take Me Higher player of the game is. The one player that needs to step up, have a big game, star player outside of Josh Allen in order for the Buffalo Bills to get that dub. And Dave, we'll start with you. Who's your Take Me Higher player of the game?
Yeah, I mean it's going to be easy to try to look for someone on offense to be the guy that kind of takes this team over the edge, but I'll go with a guy that really came onto the scene early this year and has made himself not only a fan favorite but a critical piece of this team's defense that's been really marred by injuries, and that's Terrell Bernard. I think the Bills are going to be facing a lot of volume on the ground from the Jets. I think if the Jets do try to make a concerted effort to get Brees Hall involved in the passing game, Terrell Bernard's going to have to be sideline to sideline today. He's going to be important in slowing down that run game as well. If there's a guy that can kind of make that splash turnover and the guy that had made the splash plays early in the season, I think Terrell Bernard could be that guy today to, get the Bills that interception that's kind of eluded them for a few weeks now and get that key turnover. So give me Terrell Bernard today on the defensive side of the ball, being the take me higher player of the game. He needs to lock in and have a great game today. And I think if he does, the Bills will have a really good chance.
Pops Boppy comes in and says James Cook. Charles D. G comes in and says add Oliver. Spin 0481 comes in and says Cook. If they use Cook properly, the Bills win easily. Bills are electric comes in and says Joe Brady not calling shotgun on 4th and 1. I'm going to go with Charles G. I'm going to go with Ed Oliver here, and I feel like I'm picking Ed Oliver every other week at this point because he has had an amazing season, and just the way that he can wreak havoc on the interior, even when he's not picking up sacks, he is affecting the way other teams play offense. He's got 37 pressures this year, 6 sacks, 26 hurries. He's also a really dominant part of shutting down the run. He's a really good run defender. Attacking the Jets' offensive line in this game is going to be key. It can't be Ed Oliver and Ed Oliver alone, but I think Ed Oliver is going to spearhead this effort, and I think you're going to need to see big games from A.J. Epinesa. You're going to need to see a big game from Leonard Floyd. You're going to need to see a big game from Gregory Rousseau. And I'm wondering, I don't think it's Linval Joseph's style of game, but I'm wondering, does another guy step up on the interior, right? Do we see a Tim Settle game? Do we see a Poona Ford game? If Jordan Phillips is active, does Jordan Phillips have a good game? I think maybe another guy on the interior outside of Ed Oliver needs to step up in terms of getting some pass rush oomph. And it'll be really interesting to see because I mentioned A.J. Epinesa, I mentioned Gregory Rousseau, and I mentioned Leonard Floyd, and I mentioned Von Miller. I don't know at this point, right? Like, do you keep rolling out Von Miller as your number 4, or do you give Kingsley Jonathan a shot? Do you give Shaq Lawson a shot? It'll be really interesting to see what the Buffalo Bills decide to do. I think attacking this Jets offensive line is going to be really important. And if Von Miller is not giving you your best chance to get at and pressure Zach Wilson, if Kingsley Jonathan can do it better, if Shaq Lawson can do it better, I don't care how much you're paying Von Miller. Our season is on the line here. He needs to be on the bench, and those guys need to be on the field. I sympathize, and I'm empathetic with the fact that he's coming back from an injury. He's got to ramp back up. I think that eventually he will get back to where he was, and he'll be a very good pass rusher for this football team, but he's not right now, and that's a fact. So the Buffalo Bills need to do whatever it is and put whoever they need to on the field to affect Zach Wilson. All right. On to our wild card player of the game. This is one surprise player who steps up and helps the Buffalo Bills to victory. Dave, who is your wild card player of the week in this game?
Yeah, this one's an interesting one. I think it's going to be Latavius Murray today. I do think that the Bills, with Joe Brady at the helm, maybe even though historically he hasn't been necessarily like a run-first guy at all, the matchup is really going to dictate that the Bills should stay committed to the run today. James Cook, obviously a guy that is in fair consideration for take me higher, and a lot of people mention that, but Latavius Murray is a complimentary piece, assuming that Lenny's not up for today, which I don't think he will be. He's had a couple nice runs as well lately in spots, and I think from a power standpoint, this is a guy that can really complement Cook today if the Bills decide to commit. I could see Murray scoring the only touchdown of the day today, potentially. So let me get Latavius Murray as a wild card.
I'm going to go with I was considering going defense again, but I wanted to switch up and go offense. Linval Joseph, I think, could be opening up a lot of things for your take me high player of the game, Terrell Bernard, my take me higher player of the game, Ed Oliver. So I don't think that's a wild card. I think that's just like an under the radar because they don't put up box score statistics. So I'm going to go with Khalil Shakir, right? I think the Buffalo Bills need to add another layer to this offense. They need to get somebody else involved, not named Stefon Diggs, James Cook, or Latavius Murray, or Dalton Kincaid. They need to add another amigo to that group. I'm going to go with Khalil Shakir, Joe Brady, sprinkle in some of that Curtis Samuel magic. Get the ball into Khalil Shakir's hands in some yards after the catch situation. Give him 5-6 targets in this game. Give the Jets defense something to think about other than Stefon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, and the running game. All right. Pops Mafia says Gabe Davis. Hey, if we can get the ball into Gabe Davis' hands, then anyone at this point, to add some kind of other threat. All right. Up next is our Respect You player of the game. This is a player on the New York Jets of the Buffalo Bills. They got to respect in order to win this football game. Dave, I'll start with you. Who is your Respect You player of the game?
Yeah, easy to go for guys like Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall. Like those are clearly guys that you need to respect. I'll go Quinn and Williams. I think that the Jets getting, like you mentioned with the advanced statistics about the Jets, 4-man rush rate, etc. Like Quinn and Williams is the engine of that, and he has been a thorn in the side of not just the Bills but a lot of teams in the NFL this year. He is the number 1 graded run defending interior defensive lineman per PFF this year. And also, as we know, he can get pressure in the passing game up the middle as well. And it's a problem, right? I mean, the Bills need to stay on schedule today. He's a guy that can create a really bad toxic differential play against the Bills. So for me, I think you still got to start from the inside out and respecting that Jets defense. And to me, that starts with Quinn and Williams. So give me Quinn and Williams.
Roy Collins says Zach Wilson. He's already beat us twice in 3 tries. Charles G comes in and says Huff, and JJ Pops Mafia comes in and says the Jets defensive coordinator. Yeah, Quinn Williams was getting some flack by people who don't know what they're talking about because he hadn't had a sack all year. He had his first sack last week against the Raiders. But I mean, same amount of pressures as Ed Oliver this year, 37 pressures on the season. And he's kind of like, on top of being a game-breaking pass rusher, even though the sack numbers don't add up this year, the pressure numbers do. On top of being a game-breaking run defender, he's like Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones spin into one too, because not only does he do all of those things that Ed Oliver does at like twice the size, he also goes out there and does the things that Daquan Jones does and makes other people around him that much better. So Quinn Williams is one of the best players in the National Football League, period. So kudos to you for going with him. I'm going to go the other side of the ball. I'm going to go with Brees Hall. Instant offense. He's single-handedly keeping this offense afloat at this point. The ability to get the ball in his hands and break a big play could be what breaks this game open if our offense decides they don't want to show up and play in this football game. So I'm going to go with Brees Hall. The Jets would probably have 1 win without Brees Hall, and that would be week 1 against the Buffalo Bills.
So let's just hope they continue the misusage of him. That's the hope, right?
Nate Hackett, keep doing what you're doing. Keep misusing him. Don't feed him the ball. Thank you, Nate Hackett. All right. Hot take of the game. Dave, what is your spiciest take of this football game?
And I kind of revealed it a bit earlier, but my hot take is the final score of this game is going to be the exact same final score of the game the Jets played in last week against the Raiders, and that is that the Bills are going to win, and it's kind of parlaying into my prediction, but there's going to only be 1 touchdown scored in this game. It will be by the Bills, and the final score of this game will be 16-12, the same exact score that the Raiders won by last week against the Jets. So not to give it away, obviously, my game prediction, but I did. But my hot take is same exact score Jets play in last week will be the score this week.
We'll make it an even hour today, and I'll share my game prediction as well as my hot take. My hot take here: the Jets surrender 138 yards per game on the ground. It's 31st in the NFL. I know that's sort of like a box score stat. That's not really diving into the deep analytical level. 169 yards per game in the air, which is 3rd in the NFL. My bold prediction is the Bills lean into it, and the Bills run for 200 plus yards today. And Josh Allen is a big part of the Buffalo Bills running for 200 plus yards today. And my prediction will be Bills 20, Jets 13. I'm a little riskier than you. I have the Buffalo Bills scoring 2 touchdowns and then kicking.
If the Bills score 20 points, there should be absolutely zero reason for them to lose this game.
So I'm going to go Bills 20, Jets 13. Zach Wilson gets the ball with a chance to tie the game, and the Bills defense shuts them down. That is my prediction for this football game. All right. Thank you so much, ladies and gents. We're going to cut this one short today. I got a tailgate to go get ready for.
Yeah, you got to get ready.
So I will be there on hand today at Highmark Stadium. So Dave, thank you so much. And everyone in the comment section, thank you guys so much. Hit that like button on your way out. That helps us out. And hit that share button. And if there's anyone you think needs this Buffalo Bills pregame show in their life, share share, text it to them, email it to them. We really would appreciate it. Word of mouth is the best way to help us spread what we're doing here at the Air Raid Hour and Cover One. So from Dave and myself, thank you so much. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!